Hello, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome in a very cold day to the modernization of the air navigation system stream. Aviation is currently in the midst of an unprecedented transformation. New forms of demand, emerging technologies, and new ways of doing business are bringing unique opportunities and restoring to aviation a sense of wonder and excitement that anything is possible. As the air navigation system continues to change and progress through the 21st century, we will without doubt need people like you, transformational leaders to drive this change, leaders that can effectively guide this transformation, focusing in one clear, directed vision. That is why we are here today, to examine together the new opportunities and serve as agents of change. This stream, the stream that is going to last today and tomorrow, is a stream that has 3 chapters. Today, we will discuss about the global challenges and opportunities emerging in the navigation system. We will reveal the benefits of modernizing it and discover the secrets for a cost-effective implementation. Tomorrow, we will continue with the program addressing the value of collaboration, the importance of securing resources, and investing in air navigation infrastructure. All of this within the framework of the Global Air Navigation Plan and with the goal of gathering feedback towards the 13th ICAO Air Navigation Conference taking place next year in October. My name is Olga de Frutos. I am an ICAO Air Navigation Technical Officer, and it would be a real pleasure for me to be your host during this stream. So let's start with the first chapter of this story, the GAMP as a driver for the evolution of the global air navigation system. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the moderator of this session, the Eurocontrol head of the ICAO and Concept Unit, Mr. Henk Hoff. Henk, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga, and good morning, everyone. A good future is not an extrapolation of the past, but is born and raised from its challenges. So that's the theme we are going to talk about. And as Olga said, this is the first chapter of a book, and I don't know about you, if I read a book and the first chapter, it really needs to pull me into the story. And if not, then the book gets into the corner. So that's our task here today, this morning for us, to get you into the story of today and tomorrow. And I'm really honored to have and to do this with a first-class panel of the panelists that are here on the stage. There's also a role for you in the room here. Please listen to all the presentations you are going to hear and think about this question: what are the challenges, what are the drivers that we need to take on board in the GAMP, and how do we drive the evolution of the global air navigation system? So there will be 4 presentations, and after that we will have a question and discussion session. So get your questions ready so that we can talk about this. So let me briefly introduce the panel and give a sneak preview of what we are going to say. Hajime Yoshimuru will talk about the evolution of demand. We'll talk about the way we address we address performance in the global air navigation plan. Don-Jacques Outvara, sitting over there, will give an industry perspective and will address the question how industry can drive and contribute to the evolution of the air navigation system. Steve Bradford, over there, will talk about the evolution of the GAMP and how the GAMP will respond to the challenges that are ahead of us. But we will start with the challenges, and I can't think of anyone better to share with us what these challenges are, what is driving us, and that are not only the challenges. And I'm happy and proud to introduce the first speaker, former FAA executive, former director of the Air Navigation Bureau in Montreal, and now leading and helping new entrants to get into the business and to get space. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nancy Graham.
Thank you, Hank. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do something I've never done before today and talk about something I never talk about. I'm going to talk about feelings. And I especially never talk about that this early in the morning. So I'm going to ask you to indulge me for just a few minutes. I'm stepping a little bit out of my own personal box. I don't talk about this kind of stuff very often, but I think it's critical to the future of aviation. So you'll see on this slide that we're popping up here, the future. And we talked about that earlier this week during the GANS, really about what's happening in terms of the new entrants and the change that they're making and bringing, and how we need to seize that as the people that are, you know, the traditional aviation types. And with that has to come new ideas and new thinking. But in order to have new ideas and new thinking and encourage that in other people, we have to be different ourselves. So I'm going to talk about the human element of implementation, and how we use that as part of the engine of implementation. And if we don't, it will be to our peril. So I'll share a little bit about my experience here at ICAO and try to connect some dots. Now, I haven't done a lot of preparation, so let me just stumble through this, and I hope that will be of value to you. So when I look back at my time implementing products in the FAA and implementing change in ICAO and working with many of you over the years, the why is always the first question in implementation. Why are we doing what it is we've been asked to do? And how do I connect that to who am I and what it matters to me? Why am I in this business in the first place? I'm in this business for the same reason you're in this business. I'm an international public servant. You did not come into this business for the money, right? Nobody did. You came into this business to serve the public, to serve the public interest. And whatever you do in aviation, it's of service. So as you implement whatever you're in charge of implementing, I think we have to ground all of ourselves in the sense of purpose, both as an individual, as a leader, and continue to inspire that in others. And I don't mean that like in a foo-foo kind of way. I mean, really return to what grounds you as an individual. Why are you doing what you're doing? And continue to share that, because what emanates from that is a sense of purpose that people get, I'm told, not just by words, but by actions. And I don't think we think enough about that as ourselves as leaders. So that's the first thing, I think, is sense of purpose. The second is, after the why, then, okay, well, how do you do that? How do you then transmit that sense of purpose and go get the kind of people that you need to get to inspire to help you with the how? Because there's one thing you know in aviation is there's a whole lot of stuff you don't know. Every day I learn something new in aviation, and the day that you think that you know it all, you might as well just pack it up and go home, because it just changes in a minute. So I think we have to learn every day, and we have to continue to be open. And so to do that, we have to find people who teach us stuff. I am always searching for the person that's smarter than me in whatever area, because they know things I don't know, and they bring to the table things that I can't bring to the table. So you assemble a team that you can inspire, that inspires you to learn more every day. So for me, that's the how. And then, the who, or both. And then working in a little bit more of the how is partnership. You can't do anything in this business by yourself. You need all of the different parts of the system to work together. And there needs to be a synergy to what they're doing. I remember when I was implementing what I thought was data link in the FAA some years ago, I thought I was implementing CPDLC in an oceanic system. That's what was on my job description. That's what people told me to do. That's what I had a budget for. And what I realized after a couple of years is actually what we were trying to implement was a separation reduction that was visible to the airlines and the controllers, CPDLC was just one of 50 things that had to be done in order to actually implement a benefit. So as we go back to the sense of purpose is a benefit. What is it that's going to be noticeable as a difference in the system? And bring people to that constantly, because otherwise it's just a step along the way. And that takes you to celebration and momentum. It's important to recognize that it takes a long time in this business to get to an operational improvement. But it's really important to celebrate the successes along the way and occasionally celebrate a failure or two. I know one time when we had an acquisition in the FAA that sort of went awry. That's happened a time or two. It was a very sad thing, and we had to sort of, as a group, process that it was a very sad thing. So we actually made a little tiny ship thing, and we put some firecrackers on it, and we named it, and we took it out to a little lake, and we had a big fat party with a lot of beer, and we blew it up. But it was intended to acknowledge that, you know what, it didn't work. We tried that, it didn't work. We're done, turn the page, move on. But it was recognizing that human element that everybody was really sad and sort of had to process that and say what worked and what didn't work, and then let's turn the page. So celebrating successes along the way, I think, are critically important because it creates momentum. And how you get things implemented is with momentum. And momentum breeds success. Success breeds momentum. People want to play where things are successful. They want to learn. People want to learn in an environment. They want to adopt. They want to be part of a team. So all those human elements are things that we don't talk about so much. And yet we do it. Some of us do it more naturally than others. I personally don't do it very naturally. I have had to put people around me that remind me from time to time, it's really important, it's time to celebrate X or Y. And I had the best team, and the ICAO team here is one of the best teams in the world to continue to recognize that, because slogging away in this environment, which you know is challenging and somewhat bureaucratic, you have to have people around you who continue to remind me, you know, it's time to celebrate this piece. Because you can get into some chair throwing fights in this place, right? Right? We've been in them, right? And then you have people like Hank, who are called to serve at a critical time. I mentioned it earlier in the week. He's just one of many who were called to serve at a critical time. He was called to be head of a task force for global tracking after MH370. And you and I know that when you're asked to do something here, it's over and above your day job. It means you do it at night. It means you do it on the weekends. Nobody else understands what in the heck you're doing here. It seems to be good stuff. Sure, fine, go do it. But you're also expected to do your day job. So we know you do it out of service. We all do it out of service. And acknowledging that from time to time is critically important. So I'm particularly pleased to be on this panel with Hank. I'll tell you one little story and then I'll close. So with that slide that you saw earlier, I've dedicated this part of my career because I've been so grateful to have had the opportunity to have a great career at the FAA and one here as well, and you've taught me so much. But what I learned when I was at ICAO is there's so many nations that need so much help. And there's a lot of ways to get that done. But one of the things that's most important to me is the internet brings special gifts to people who can't get to other places. For me, little girls learning is really important. We need more little girls in the world to lead. And little girls that are under the rule of the Taliban aren't allowed to go to school. But if they have the internet, they can learn anything they want. And little boys and girls in villages that can't get to colleges, if they have the internet, they can learn anything they want. You can get medical advice. You can get all kinds of tools. Are there great things that go with the internet? Great. Are there bad things? Sure. But the fact is, it is part of our daily lives, and I would like to make sure that everybody has access to a tool for this part of their lives, and that we allow all the good things that it can provide. So this is a deeply personal mission to me. So I called my friends, like you do when you're implementing something, and said, hey, listen, see what's ahead of us? See what needs to get done? There's a hole that needs to get filled. There's people that are putting in fresh money and fresh energy and fresh talent. They just need a little stick and rudder to help them enter the aviation system safely. They want to. They just don't know how. Can you help? So I called Hank 30 days ago and I said, dude, We need to work on a concept of operations for upper airspace because, you know, there's some flying out there, but it's coming fast and heavy, and we need to work it out. Can you give me your thoughts on that? Now, you know, it's complicated in Europe. They got to ask a lot of people to do a lot of things to do that. Did he coordinate? Yes, he did. But he stepped out on a limb, and in 30 days, he came here and talked about what the views might be. Same with Steve Bradford. I gave him a little more time, I have to say. He had more like 4 or 5 months. But you call your friends and you say, listen, I'm working on something important. It's for the greater good. We want to make sure it fits into the overall system. Can we play together? Can we work together on something? And I'm going to tell you, not one time in my professional career, not one time ever, when I was working on something that people knew was for the greater good, did anybody ever tell me no. They would say, I can't right now, but I can find you somebody. But they never ever said no. And I think if you just add that to your implementation thinking, people that are grounded in purpose, understand what you're trying to do, and want to be helpful and have something to add, if you just ask, they will. So thank you for letting me talk a little bit about something I never talk about, but the human element I think is so very important. You'll hear now lots of stories about technical improvements, but try to remember that it's people that actually make it happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. It's a subject very close to my heart, and I think it's unfortunately unique that in this building we talk about this so essential element of change, the interhuman connection. But it's a driver, it's the driver behind all of us. So let us now go to the Global Air Navigation Plan. To the challenges ahead of us that we are facing, the new entrants, the evolution of demand over the past years and still ahead of us, and how the GAMP is going to respond to this. What will be the structure of the GAMP? How will the GAMP take these things on board? What are the driving concepts? And it's my pleasure to introduce to you the next speaker, which is Steve Bradford. He's the Chief Scientist for Architecture and Next-Gen Development in the FAA Next-Gen Office. Steve, floor is yours. Please welcome Steve Bradford.
And I have to stand because I flail my arms around a lot, and I don't want to hit anybody on the panel. I wasn't going to start with this, but let me tell you that, in fact, let me go to the first slide. The Global Air Navigation Plan has evolved over time. The first one was done by the Secretariat with the support of the ATM-CP, the ATM Concept Panel, way back in 2002. I had the privilege of helping with that, which tells you that I've been around here way too long. I had the privilege of helping with the update in 2007, and they were great plans but they were aspirational. You should go for these performances, and here's the areas that you should look at them. In 2012, this woman walked into my office and said, you're going to be on the tech team for writing the GAMP. And I knew I couldn't say no. Nancy. So I was involved in the 2013 GAMP, and I was involved in the 2016 GAMP. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the Global Air Navigation Plan. The big change in 2013 is that Nancy said, you know, we have to tell people how to get there, what the basic elements are, and how do you get to modernization, and provide it as in terms of steps. The FAA has this next-gen plan that's out there, and everybody thinks that that's the nirvana, everybody except Europe. And Europe thinks it's Cesar. And even though we've been coordinating for a long, long time, and we actually had the same elements, we didn't use the same names. And so the GAMP became sort of a way for the world to see how things are common. And it was actually very helpful for both the United States and Europe. So we have this long-term vision, and we did it in terms of these aviation system block upgrades, ASBUs. And we thought it was a wonderful plan. Lots of pros, lots of concepts. In 2016, we did an update, and we purposely did not change the structure. We just changed the words. We cleaned them up a little bit. A lot had changed. A lot had changed, and we needed to really go back and revisit some things. The concepts have never changed. The performance has never changed. What's changing around us all the time is our understanding of the technologies that are coming to bear, because the rest of the world is changing, and the new entrants who are actually exploiting that technology. In 2012, an iPad was still a novelty that you walked around with, and you took pictures, and maybe you streamed a movie. By 2016, it became a vital part of every flight deck in the world, and we started to realize that internet and everything else was changing things. We still have the same basic objectives in mind, but we said we have to refresh this thing. The other thing that we noticed was that, I don't want to be disparaging, but there were a lot of groups writing out the GAMP for Dummies. Because while I thought it was wonderful prose that I helped write, people could not understand what the underlying elements were, and so people were doing translation documents that said, well, this module has these 6 things in it. Recognizing that we were getting various interpretations, recognizing we were getting mostly the same, but some variations, the Secretariat, Olga in particular, decided, maybe we should take that on board and say, let's build it based on elements. And so the 2019 document, this multi-layered approach, basically reflects the objectives of the original GAMP, but in a much more structured way to make it easier for people to understand. And we still have our GAP mock vision. Particularly proud of that because I helped write that. We have our conceptual roadmap, which is a little bit different. We want to lay out, okay, how do we think the concept is evolving over time? And we try to be a little bit stronger on the global performance ambitions. Haven't changed, clarifying. And then at the next level down, we have our ASBUs, which I'll talk a little bit more about, performance-based decision-making methods, and something we call the BBBs. The BBBs are the basic building blocks, and that's to emphasize there are some things that every nation should do in order to provide safe and efficient operations. The basic building blocks. In the original GAMP, they were all kind of filtered into Block 0. We said in Block 0, there's some very, very important things. So we call those out. In the GAMP, those are probably the only things that get close to being a mandate. You should do these for safety. The rest of it is, as we'll see, is more about you should do this because you have a need. So Olga's reminding me to click the screen. So at the managerial level, we look at our strategic approach. You look at the demand in your region or your location. You look at your performance ambitions. What are your shortfalls from a performance perspective? Now that I've done my basic building blocks, what else do I need to address? What are my challenges? And from there, I can get to my solutions. Are they political, economic, social? And what we address in the GAMP is the technical. So, we have a high-level technical solution that's laid out in the GAMP. We start with today. For some of us, yesterday. For some of us, tomorrow, but we start with today. We look at our evolutionary steps, 1, 2, and 3, and our conceptual roadmap. Where do we want to be from a performance perspective and in a series of vectors, which I'll discuss in a couple minutes. And we tell you how you should apply this to different operating environments with different demands and different characteristics. So that's all in the GAMP. This is where it's applicable, this is what you need to know. And this is no different than we probably do in even the largest countries. In the United States, I don't treat every airport the same. I don't treat every terminal the same. Some have different characteristics, some have different environments. For instance, I'll just mention that JFK has lots of large aircraft. It's different than LaGuardia, which is small, has lots of small aircraft. They have different dynamics and different needs. So we translated these into what we call the ASBUs, and we have a concept, really a sub-concept, in each of these themes for the ASBUs. We have airport operations, we have the information, we have the higher altitudes. And then we get down into specific elements. These are the operational improvements you should make. And they're all time-scaled in terms of the ASBU blocks. And then when I get to the next slide, I want to make sure I emphasize something. An ASBU block is a 6-year time frame with starting dates defining a deadline for which the elements will be available. Okay, and it's 6 years because it matches 2 of these 3-year cycles for the ICAO assembly in the plan. But notice it says when it's available for implementation. Some people misunderstand and think that that's the date you have to implement. That's just when we're promising out of ICAO and our combined agreements that we will have the things there for you if you wish to implement. Not a mandate, but a toolkit. Each thread talks about the need to improve in order to achieve the global ATM operational concept. Each element is a subset of that thread, which is a specific performance change, operational performance change. And a module is a collection of those elements into a easily understood performance change. So we could have had, 300 elements, but there's a smaller subset that are like, these are important if you do this in this environment. Now the key thing here is that we also are laying out the regulations, the procedures, the avionics, the ground systems, and the training that we need to do. These are not all developed by ICAO, these aren't developed by panels. This is a total participation of both industry, nations, ANSPs in order to move this forward. But we're really clear that we need to address all of these things as you move forward, and these are what we call ASBU enablers. Now, the key concepts, management by trajectory. This does not mean we're going to strategically deconflict all the aircraft in the airspace. It says that if we understand the intent for every flight, we can do a better job of planning from the strategic to the near tactical to the tactical, which is separation. So we want to move from only the controller and only the pilot actually knowing what's going on at this moment to we're all in the picture. Information sharing. The only way you can get to that is if you're willing to share the information of where you're going to be. If you're a 10-hour flight, why should the only people who know what's going to happen are the people who are only 30 minutes downstream, and the rest of you are guessing? We can share that information across the whole regime of the flight. It needs to be both network and flight centric. We let every aircraft, every flight try to do its best, but we understand that there are congestion points, there are conflictions. You do have to synchronize schedules in order to let the flights, 1, fly the most efficiently, and 2, allow the best use of your assets. Now, what's the level of performance here? It depends on your need. If you're a small airport, you can deconflict the aircraft coming to the runway with 2 minutes. They can probably do anything they need to do efficiently. If you're a Charles de Gaulle or a JFK, you probably have to tightly synchronize. But the basic premises are there, and it happens because we are able to have the information and the trajectories to do this coordination. An integrated infrastructure. I'm always scared about this, because some people take this as saying, well, I'm going to build a giant machine, and that machine's going to do all the decision making. What this really says is that we learn to integrate the information provided by each of our infrastructures into decisionable pieces of information that can be shared among our different decision support tools all the way down to the controller position. We integrate through information. And finally, we are multimodal. It doesn't do, we have to understand the need for the information to flow out of our system to the other operators, taxi drivers and everything else in order to make airport operations efficient and the total operations efficient. And I need to speed up a little bit. An example from the United States is just to show that we finally learned to follow what we preach in the GAMP, is we're moving into trajectory-based operations. And what does that mean for us? Well, that means that the flights can fly the most efficient path they want to, but we actually have to synchronize our time-based systems. So let me go a little faster. We call it initial TBO. Somebody labeled it before I got a chance to. They oversold. What it says at every location in the United States where it's important, we will have a time-based system for both arrivals and sometimes departures, and we will have efficient RNAV procedures and, where necessary, RMP procedures. And we have the efficient RNAV procedures because they also provide safety that the standard SIDS and STARS don't always bring inefficiencies. By 2025, we want to link the schedules of each of those locations where required so that we can synchronize the flow of aircraft from across the nation. Today, using telephones, if you want to leave Charlotte, North Carolina and go to Washington, D.C., somebody has to call a center to another TRACON to get permission for you to land at that far airport. In our most highly dense locations, oftentimes the plane is arriving at a location before it's actually departing. What we want to do is automate that and synchronize that by 2025 so we can not only provide efficient flights, but we can do the best job. But let me go to the next picture. Oh, clearly if you look at this, this is essentially what you saw on the previous slide. We have learned that we have to lay out all of these things to be successful, just like the GAMP. And the ASBU and the elements and the enablers all listed. We're working on that. And finally, this is our picture of Washington, D.C. I want you to note that up towards Manchester, New Hampshire, they manage arrivals. I don't care, they synchronize their arrivals into their airport, but their departures, because they're going someplace else, have to be coupled. You'll also see some small airports where we're doing some things, but we're not doing anything from a trajectory-based operation perspective. Implement what you need, where you need it, and understand that. So the GAMP is not, you must implement all these things. Choose your tools wisely. So the ASBU framework is a global collaborative commitment between all stakeholders to develop the necessary enablers, and it's important we agree on the enablers, which are mostly information exchanges, so that we can have this harmonization. When we're eliminating voice as the primary means of communication, you got to be clear on what you're saying to each other from a message perspective. For the operational improvement of an element, which is a small operational change, in an agreed timeline, which means a block. We're currently finishing up the block 1 stuff in the GAMP. We're moving on to what happens in 2026, what happens in 2032, and then, glimmer in my eyes, because if I'm still around, 2038. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing this sort of preview of the GAMP, the structure of the GAMP, how it will respond to the challenges. Later in the program, we will look more into the GAMP. It's, of course, a lot of information that will be included in the GAMP, but there will be ways to help you go through that information and make it relevant for you. So the GAMP, the driver on the evolution, for the evolution of the air navigation system. We now go to see how industry can also help us in driving the evolution of the air navigation system. And I'm happy to introduce Don Jacques Outvera. I took some lessons to pronounce that name. It's a beautiful name, and he works for NAVBLUE, leading the Airspace and Airport Solution Business Unit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Don.
So good morning. I'm not going to talk about people, but I would like to get your secret to have the people say yes anytime you ask for anything. You may wonder why Airbus is having flight operations and ATM services units. The answer is pretty straight. We would like to sell more aircraft. It's obvious. And to sell more aircraft, we want to have solutions to unlock the airspace and to make sure that once the airspace has been unlocked, the airlines can fly more efficient trajectories. Because we developed the technology there, just we missed the infrastructure to answer this technology. So, what does it mean? Airlines are losing 4.5 billion every year. It means that if you are able to fly real trajectory-based operation, I mean that tail-centric and mission-centric trajectories, then we believe that we should save up to 3.5% of the airline fuel bill. And 3.5% of the airline fuel bill is 4.5 billion US dollars every year. So there is a big room for improvement, and we should not wait for this. You know, we should accelerate. We should move forward. And without saying about, you know, the non-normal operation, the weather, the delays, which is 10 times these figures. So there is a big room for improvement for the change. So this is a message I want to say. So you may have heard, you know, big data. This is the buzzword of today. How to get big data, how to make services around big data. What we like to do is really to build innovative concept around this data, big data. So we would like to leverage this big data and to build up. I will come back later on with a few examples to illustrate what does it mean. Streamline the airspace changes thanks to a better use of data and collaborative decision-making tools. What does it mean? In NAVBLUE, we used to work on airspace design optimizations. To change an airspace takes ages. I mean, it's just to convince people that there is a room for improvement, that there is a win-win situation for the air traffic controller, that for the airline it's better to have more efficient trajectory, etc., etc. But once you have changed the airspace, nobody wants to change it again. Whereas you can't be perfect the first time. You can optimize your airspace the best way you want, but you are not perfect the first time. And we have the chance to get access to a big amount of data to really assess what is the optimization, what is the efficiency of the solutions that you have provided. And you have a lot of tools, and PBN is a wonderful tool because you can draw the line whenever you want, whenever you need. And today, once you have implemented this new PBN concept, then you stop and you look, and that's it. You should really have a change process every 6 months to review the efficiency of your design and to update it. Why not? I mean that you can assess what is the benefit. So you should get access to this data and on a more regular basis update and not wait for 20 years for another change. Reduce the development lead time for onboard application. What does it mean? Today, most of the ATM applications are embedded on an FMS or other avionics systems. And if we are optimistic, it takes 3 years from your idea to the implementation into the aircraft. We have a lot of engineers in the Airbus Design Office that are very innovative, very clever, that have a lot of ideas. But if they have to wait for 3 to 5 years to see their ideas in flight, in real, it's too long. I mean that we should change this and change the way we deal with this ATM and flight operation function. So I will come back to this. Create a real collaborative platform. So having CDM, it's a good word, but people have to share the data. They have really to share it and to use it. It's not just having a system in place. It's people have to share it and to really use at the best. I will come back later on this because it's really important that people move to more sharing and more improvement. So, few words about Skywise. What Skywise means, it's Airbus at Le Bourget Air Show last year in July launched a new big data platform called Skywise, aiming at gathering a lot of data in order to create new services. So together with this platform, Airbus announced that we will provide the aircraft with a new tool, a new equipment to broadcast much more parameter on the ground. So FOMAX. And with this tool, we will be able to broadcast up to 25,000 parameters, whereas today at 320, if I remember, it's broadcasting around 1,000 parameters, 20 times more. But then once you get this data, what do you do with this data? So we can build up a lot of application around predictive maintenance, for instance, but where NavBlue enter into the game, so we are completely integrated to this Skywise platform in order to develop new ATM and flight operation solutions. One example is what we call tail-centric and mission-centric solutions. Today, we have the mean to clearly know what is the real aircraft performance. And as you know, as the aircraft is getting older and older, the engines are getting older, the aircraft performance is not the same as the one that you get when the aircraft is out of the factory. And we have the mean to fine-tune some parameters in the FMS in order for the aircraft to fly really an optimum flight distance profile. And getting access to this data allows us to look back into the system and to fine-tune this, what we call the idle factor, to have a much more efficient descent. We can use this process as well to have an MSN-centric flight planning. So I like the idea of trajectory-based and mission-based operation. I would like to have the sky that is allowing this, but let's discuss this later on, to have free routing and so on. But to get access to this data allow you to give the pilots some means to have optimum flight levels. But the pilot, if they ask for an optimum flight level, we should expect that the ATC gives him the clearances to fly this optimum. Otherwise, you can get the better tool of the world. You need the ANSP to build up the airspace so that we can take most credit of this new technology. Example of what kind of function doesn't need to be in an avionics that takes 3 or 5 years times to develop. It's 2 examples, but I have many. Surface traffic and Arctic system. You could imagine that this function, and it's already the case today, can be embedded in an FMS and not being displayed on navigation displays that you need 3 years to update. Same for onboard taxi routing guidance. And by doing this, you allow to have the same kind of information in the cockpit and on the ground. Because you can have an iPad on the cockpit and an iPad for the air traffic controller, and they have the same application, and then it's much easier to communicate because you have exactly the same tool and the same understanding on the operation. And many more to come. You know that we are talking about, electronic charts, but electronic charts is not only having a PDF chart on your tablet. It's much more. Today we have the means to have what we call vectorized charts, where you have many information that are linked to the trajectory, and if you want to share more information, you have to give access to the pilot with more information so that he's able to share it with the ground. So with this kind of electronic chart, you will be able to replan and re-exchange much more data with the ground. Open platform ready for pilot interaction and collaboration. We had an idea that is, the pilot is at the heart of the operation. So let's imagine, for instance, that the pilot find an issue in the AIP. I know that it never happens, but maybe. There is an issue in your IAP, the threshold coordinates are wrong, and so on. If you give the pilot the opportunity to report this, and you create a platform where you give access to the NSP, to the navigation data supplier, to the other pilot to say, hey, look guys, at this runway threshold, I had an issue, so I have a problem, so I report the issue. And then, on a lively basis, you give access to this platform, and then you, by this collaborative platform, you enhance the overall system, and you can update your AIP the next cycle and change this issue. So it's just, and the community is aware of this. So it's just to give you an example of, today it's very easy. We have all the means to do this. We just have to create the ecosystem so that it works. For those who have attended the airport session, I saw that we are already beyond the CDM. So airport CDM, it's already done, it exists and so on. So most and more people talk about airport operations center. So it's a very good world where you see that you can connect the airline, the airport, the NSP. You have a lot of great function, hypervision, prediction, alerts, what if, great. And then you have KPIs. But KPIs for what? I mean, that's how to define these KPIs. And I think that it's important that ICAO and us, we come around the table and we discuss about few, not many, not 50, but maybe it's 5, 10 KPIs that will allow us to clearly measure the airport efficiency. And that's tomorrow, you're going to be able to benchmark airports all around the world, because if one airport says, I'm the best of the world, so I have the best KPIs, but which KPIs? So we have to all agree on what makes sense for the operation and makes sense for the aviation to clearly better assess the efficiency of the airport. So we would like to have this KPI in place, and I know that we are working on having this KPI, but I think that we should simplify it and get, let's say, less KPIs to share, so that it's better, it's much easier to understand for the stakeholders. Not too bad, huh? 3 minutes left. My mom says that you speak too much and for innovation, and I'm passionate with aviation, so I can speak forever. So I'm happy to see that. So what is our vision? Our vision is that we should really leverage this Airbus big data by creating new analytics, a lot of analytics. We have a lot of ideas around how to improve the airline operations, the flights, the safety. Around safety, I think that there are big room for improvement, so all the pilots can have access to how they behave compared to the community without, with keeping, the confidentiality and so on. But we have a lot of ideas around this. Tail-centric mission, it's obvious. Flight management system function extension into the FB, yes. It's ready today, so let's move forward and get rid of some functions that exist today in some avionics and that are very long to update and so on, and move to more EFB application. And maybe we should create a class 1.5 EFB, between class 1 and class 2, where you have more communication with your iPad rather than using a fully connected or class 3 EFB, which is the same, very, very difficult to upgrade. And collaborative function and platform, that's obvious. Everybody talk about it, but let's do it. This is available today, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Don, for sharing your passion. It's always good to see passionate speakers, and it's very good. And also to have a look at what industry is developing, importance of sharing information, not for the sake of sharing information, but to make the environment better. So that's very good. Okay, so we're coming to the last speaker, last but certainly not least. And I already would like to ask you to get ready for the session after the last speaker, when you are expected to raise some questions and to challenge us on what we have said. So please get ready for that. I'm honored to introduce last speaker. That's Hajime Yoshimura. And Hajime, as you all know, is the president of the Air Navigation Commission here in ICAO. Please welcome Hajime Yoshimura.
Okay, thank you, Henk, and good morning, everybody. Okay, so I'm so glad to meet you here and to discuss about the next Global Air Navigation Plan. So, as Nancy and also our as a speaker mentioned that GAMP is not new, so it's was created a long time ago, but every 3 years, the ICAO updated based on the input and opinion from the state and the international organizations. However, why we have this symposium at this timing is, as you know, that we need to update because situation has been changing every year and every time. And also the future focus also is changing every year. And also we have seen challenges regarding this Global Air Navigation Plan. As you feel and as you experience how difficult to implement. So I think one of the challenges is how to implement this global plan. So, for the perspective of Air Navigation Commission, so this symposium, from this symposium to the next Air Navigation Conference next year, is a very important time for us to understand what is the questions we need to solve, and also what is the solutions we can incorporate in the next Global Air Navigation Plan. So those reasons. So I would like to present some topics. Maybe it will help some question setting for us. So okay. So next, okay, I will. Okay. So I just first, what is the future forecast based on the current situations? People talk about figures, but for me it's difficult to understand what's the magnitude. So I just illustrate some illustration. So okay, so okay, this PowerPoint has missing some my original term, but the above figure is the employment of aviation personnel. So currently 63.5 million people are engaged in aviation. So if we compare with the population of the country, so Italy is the same number of the people. So all people in Italy is now working for aviation, it means. So 23rd rank. And the right figure is 2034. So from the next figure is 2015, so about after 20 years ago. So ICAO forecast 99 million people are engaged in aviation. So the rank become 13. So do you know which country is this one? It's Ethiopia. So 99 million people. And the below one is economic benefit, so GDP, aviation created at this moment. So 2015, 2.7 trillion US dollars. So it's the same as UK. And 20 years later, so ICAO focus 5.9 trillion. So number for France and Germany's GDP. So combination of two countries, aviation will produce. So it's a very good, economic value for us. Okay. And the next slide. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, and okay. So I should. Yeah. So the year is different, but this is a person, passengers. So 2016, 3.8 billion people traveled. So compare with world population, 7.2 billion this moment. So about half of people are traveling all the world. However, 2050, so about 35 years later, so 16 billion. So of course, population will increase in the future, but based on 2016 figure, so about 222% of the people will travel all the world. So we can, I cannot imagine, the situation in the future, but it's really huge. People, many people will travel all the world. So, okay. And I think you saw this figure a lot of times, so I skip, but it's just revenue passenger kilometers. So, okay. And also, we also think about new entrant. 3 years ago, we haven't talked so much about commercial space or drones, but for 3 years, industry developed a lot. And I borrow from my French colleague because I like this figure, because commercial space, there are several type of operations they are thinking. So it's too small, so I don't want you to disturb. But some commercial airplane will launch from the airplane, and also it launched from the ground and getting back by gliding or with the help of parachuting. So, and also I think you've seen so many drones operations. And but the ICAO has a symposium this September. So the president of Liu mentioned in his opening that so some 10% of global civil aviation operation will be unmanned in just 10 years' time. So not only we focus lot of traffic, but also we will have new entrant to increase the traffic. This situation. Okay. So. Steve also already mentioned about this revolution. Global Air Navigation Plan 2013 is shift from technology to performance, and 2016 is using a performance-based approach and the category of potential key performance indicators. So that mentions key performance indicators. For the perspective of ICAO, because for the safety, we always talk about data-driven decision, data-driven risk analysis. The challenges for this current GAMP is we produce this guidance and encourage states or international organizations to implement. But we are weak in the feedback mechanism, and what improvement has been achieved in all over the world. So to create a better plan, we need a feedback, and that's why I believe key performance indicators will be good data and for us to make a decision for the future. So I would like to encourage state and international organizations to provide input or data to the ICAO for better planning. Okay, and I will skip this explanation for this, but this is the current GAMP 2016 key performance indicator. So it will be discussed and improved based on your input. So next GAMP 2019. So ICAO established several study group, and one of the group is a visionary team. I believe I saw many chair and the members are also attending today. So you know this matter. But as I mentioned in the beginning, so we need to, from now to next Air Navigation Conference, this work needs to be accelerated to make a perfect thing. And okay, so next one. Okay, so all right. Okay, so this is a high performing air navigation system which the currently visionary team is thinking. So the agenda given to me today is safety or access and equity. So I would like to talk about these issues. So I just want to go back to my favorite slide. French guy. Yeah. Of course, I also like a US one, but okay. So for example, so access and equity. So as I mentioned that this for example this commercial aircraft when the speed is different from the current airplane. Also, when they come back, they will use a gliding or parachute. So it's very slow compared with airplane. So because we need to provide access to new entrant as well. Because Chicago Conventions is to allow so new entrants, airspace should be commonly used for everybody. But of course, without any rule, it will provide a mess. So absolutely, so we need to, we shouldn't exclude, but we need to integrate. However, under the harmonized rule. Otherwise, it will have messy and create some risk. Okay, and also we also think about that. So in this sense, so airspace management and also is considered, and also we also considered the boundary of civil aircraft and space vehicle. So currently we generally understand 100 kilometer altitude will be a boundary, but there is no consensus among nations. So that legal aspect need to be solved. And also see and avoid. So because these new entrants interact with other civil aircraft, airplanes. So how to make each other to see and avoid, and also aerodrome. So currently, basically, airplane is using, but of course, these space commercial vehicle may or will use the aerodrome, current aerodrome. So we need to consider how to integrate them, and also aerodrome CDM also need to be considered. So so what I want to say today is from now and next October, we need to think about a lot of things. So we need to solve a lot of questions. So I just show some example what kind of questions we need to solve for 1 year. So for example, two UAS delivering pizza crash into each other. Is it aviation accident, and state need to do investigation or not? Current Annex 13 is not clear enough. And if a UAS or space debris collision with the building, is it aviation accident? What does the target level of safety should depend on? So we need to So as I mentioned, the current Annex 13 framework is not clearly define this responsibility of state. So those questions need to be solved. And the other one is who has a priority to the airspace. So a flight of passenger or other type of aircraft. And if the RPAS was a humanitarian mission, so can the air traffic controller will give priority to the RPAS or not? And also in an increasing automated system, which is a mechanism to ensure interoperability and consider different needs. So human factors are also how we engage in this factor. Okay, so my conclusion is, so in the new operating environment, some key performance areas might be challenged. I think many key performance areas might be challenged. And despite the different visibility of the key performance areas, a balanced approach between all of them is necessary. And the GAMP 2019 will further develop the performance-based approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy, for sharing this with us, giving a view on demand, the different types of demand, the growth of traffic, the new entrants, also how that translates to performance, and leaving us with some questions that, of course, need to be answered in the future ahead of us that will bring us to the completion of the GAMP. So we had 4 presentations on the subject on evolution of the air navigation system, and as I said already, there's some time, and the time starts now, for questions to our panelists and to have a good discussion. So you had some time. This does not come as a surprise that I asked this question. So who would like to kick off? And I see already a number of hands. Oh, this is great. I start over there. And if you take the floor, please push the microphone, briefly say your name and where you come from, and then ask your question.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you very much to you and the panelists. Very nice presentations and introductions. Actually, my name is Adel Al-Aufi. I'm from the Saudi Air Navigation Services Company. My question is regarding the GAMP. Actually, I would like to raise here, if you fail to plan, you'll plan to fail. On the other hand, too much planning is a wasting of resources and performance and even efficiency. Do we need to plan a certain redundancy of updating the GAMP? Then in between, we might have challenges and we might have some places where we need to update or enhance or change some part of the GAMP. Then we just make it as annexes. Then we freeze it for from 5 to 10 years. Then we keep maintaining this redundancy. I understand the need and the challenges might facing the aviation industry, especially the air navigation, especially technologies and training and a lot of materials. We might insisting for the change, but we have to have a certain redundancy for the change. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the question. Who would like to take this first question? Okay, Nancy.
I'll take it. Based on my experience, not because I can't speak for the ICAO anymore, but I would say I think the days of what we like to think of as stable planning are over. I particularly applaud the Secretariat and those that are working with the Secretariat on making this a living document that is electronic in version, because even printing them is like, who does that anymore? Only me. So I think the days that they're tremendously stable is over. I also think that it's not a one-size-fits-all. For example, there's nothing in the air navigation plan today about the new entrants, either in the smalls or in the balloons and the upper, right? Doesn't mean we're not doing it. Plenty of them flying around. So I think we just have to think that the document itself is a good primer. It's a good place for particularly the states that are progressing quickly to look at an aid to develop their ongoing operations and supporting operations in their infrastructure. And it's a good document to support getting the budget necessary to put in the changes and the rationale to support that. So I applaud the Secretariat for continuing to progress it and for all the engineering that's gone into it and the labor that's gone into it over the years. It continues to be. But I think a 3-year cycle is reasonable, which is what we settled on for 10 or 15 years. At one time now it's a 3-year cycle because it cycles up with the assemblies. But in fact, even that's not enough. But it's enough stability to maintain some continuity and at the same time allow for some updates. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think that's probably the best we're going to get.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Let's go to the next question, Thomas.
Okay, yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Thomas Buchanan. I'm from the Swiss Air Navigation Service Provider. And the question I'd like to address is, how will ICAO cater for the various speeds in the regions? Some regions will not need everything in the GAMP. Some regions probably will need a lot more than what's in the GAMP. In Europe, we've got CESAR, there's NextGen. How will the relation between GAMP and the master plans be effective? And I've got the microphone, I might as well ask a second question if you allow me. And that goes to the aircraft equipage. I was chair of the PBN task force. The major problem we had was the chicken and egg syndrome. I can take one example, such as MLS, which was a great success. Nobody wanted to implement MLS because they weren't available on the ground, and we didn't want to deploy on the ground because nobody was able to fly them. So how will you break that loop? Especially if you look at that average age of the fleet, which I think is 12 years. Some aircraft probably a bit younger, and some not, a lot older than that. So how will you get new technology running on the aircraft and synchronized with the ground? Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sure there are some good views around the table on this. Steve.
Repeat the first one, because I was focusing on the second one. What was the first one again? Because I had an answer, and then I jumped in.
It's about the deployment in the regions. How do you synchronize the plans, CESAR, ATM Master Plan, NextGen, GAMP?
Every region should come up with a plan based on the performance requirements of their region. The good news about the GAMP is that hopefully, and we do this after we finish every GAMP, we show how NextGen maps directly to the GAMP, and CESAR does the same thing, so that people can't be confused that we're selling different things. If you could say, okay, the GAMP reflects the operational changes that both NextGen and CESAR think they need to have in certain locations, but even then, it depends on the location. But I do think that that's why we really emphasize, understand your needs of your locations, and then work together in your location. You don't have to have the same plan I have to put into New York, just because we're doing it in New York. I'm not going to put the same plan into Dallas-Fort Worth, which is the world's largest TRACON as far as I can see. So, it depends on the environment. As to the equipage, we always have this problem. You say the average aircraft is 12 years old. That means we're dragging about 30 years worth of technology along. In the United States, we very specifically look at the equipage of the fleet going into a location, understand how it may change, and then determine whether we're going to put our procedures in. And we're very upfront. We say, based on the current state of the fleet, we can't get value for putting in these procedures. If you as an industry want to upgrade the fleet that's going into this location, we are then, together we can put in these new procedures. So we've had problems where we couldn't put one of the new procedures into Atlanta because of the vast difference of performance. But I could do it at Denver where the fleet is more homogeneous. So you incentivize it not by going to every place. You just say, if the fleet is there, we will do it. If the fleet's not there, we won't do it. And we do that together.
Don Jacques?
Yeah, just one more word. The chicken and egg syndrome is something that I always heard, and I cannot support anymore this word. I have another question for you, because we are talking a lot about best equipped, best served concept, but are you implementing this in your area? At one point, if you don't give any incentive to the airline to fly this and to get benefit of this new technology, they would not equip. So if you give some incentive for instance, RNP aircraft to fly more efficient trajectory, then and to have the priority over the other, then there will be a big move from the airline industry to equip the aircraft. So this is, you know, the chicken and egg syndrome is not always on the OEM or airline side. It's ENSP have to change as well, and the aviation has really to move together to give incentives.
Yeah, we need, of course, to learn from the situations that we experienced in the past and move on in a better way, that we avoid that kind of situations. Nancy, you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'm going to get a little bit crazy here. If you asked me that question 3 years ago, I would have a very different answer than I have today. But I've seen some things in the last couple of years that have shocked me in terms of technology enabling new things. Absolutely shocked me. I personally think PBN will be the last big step that we take in what we think of as today's traditional way forward in aviation. I sincerely believe that what we're learning with the smalls and the upper and the UTM, now that's a lot of people think a lot of things about it, but it basically means a level of autonomy on board the craft, whatever it may be, a balloon, a small, whatever it is. And the autonomy that's being driven there will drive us to very different things on board new aircraft, and there will be little retrofit of what exists today. That's what I think. Now, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for anybody else, just based on what I've seen. So I just think what we've experienced in my predominant lifetime in aviation is the way we've been doing it is just too damn slow. And we are going to see a step change based on what the technology has to offer. Now, having said that, I think that the barrier to some of entry for some of that automation or autonomy is going to be some tools, some electronic tools that we don't have worldwide today. And I go back to the NOTAM, for example. If we're looking to understand intent by every craft in a digital way, we don't have an electronic NOTAM system today that will enable that. Perhaps that's a barrier to entry for the new entrants like Amazon, Facebook, Google. Maybe we tell them in order to use those craft the way that you want to use it and to get the optimum performance, maybe that's what you gotta, maybe that's your ticket in. Maybe you provide the world. Now, don't tell them I said this, okay? But maybe you provide the world with a global NOTAM system today that's electronic. Maybe that's what you got to do. I don't know that that's the right one. The engineers will figure that out. But I think those new entrants are willing to help the overall system be better in order to enable what they want to do as well. It's a partnership, and they know it. So y'all just got to figure out, what is that? Tell them.
Steve, I come back to you, but I would like to... Yeah? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I expected this.
So I agree that the new entrants, the UASs, and all the capabilities that you're going to see on the new aircraft are different. So I do think we're just going to have to change our vocabulary, because geofencing is PBN. It's just another label. And they will actually have to have higher performance geofencing probably than anything that's on board our aircraft today. So you're probably right, it is the last bastion, but we just got to change our name. And I also agree that, and I think we already saw it in our third discussion, is that all aircraft are completely connected now, so we have to rethink our current comm infrastructure and our current procedures for dealing with the aircraft, and because the autonomous aircraft or the semi-autonomous aircraft certainly aren't going to use B2 to send messages back and forth between the operator and the aircraft. I may use B2 to send messages to the operator ground, but I think we really are seeing a breakdown of that current infrastructure, and I think Nancy's comments and the comment about this ubiquitous connected aircraft really prove that.
Are there more views on this from the audience? Please.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. Ahmed Al-Jalaf from United Arab Emirates. I would like to touch on what Nancy said before when she had the experience in the FAA, and then when she moved to ICAO, she found that the other nations need help, and that's what we notice as well from our regional and global engagement, that there is a fragmentation of performance from one state to another, or from one ANSP to another. And we obviously, and we discussed in the panel yesterday, in the PERGS panel yesterday, the importance of the political will to give the right level of attention and priority to modernizing air navigation. Now, it is slightly different when you speak about aviation security or other means, building a new runway. That attracts political attention, and it actually expedites the decision making when it comes to investment. But when you talk about modernizing air navigation, there is a bit of hesitation and lots of questions asked before the decision is made. Fortunately, we are in the UAE, we understand that, and we are prioritizing these activities. But how would perhaps ICAO from different, or from the panel's view, take some measures to attract the politicians or the decision makers to steer the right level of investments into modernizing air navigation activities? Are we perhaps suggesting to have a high-level meeting just prior to the next year's air navigation conference? Something needs to be done there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. How do we get the political level moving and supporting all what needs to happen? Who?
I have a good idea. Look, you're 100% right. And if you think about it, how many of you in the room are technical people? How many in the room are political people? Okay, all right, Mike, we love you anyways. So look, here's the thing. We are crap at telling the story about how aviation brings economies forward. You know who's really good at it? These new entrants are really, really good at telling the story about how investing in certain technologies bring forward economies. And so I'm learning from them. I will say ICAO's doing a better job. They're trying now to create what I call the story, which we don't tell very well. But the people that come in as directors general or even ministers often are technical people. Sometimes they're aviation people, sometimes they're not. But they're not particularly good salespeople. And so I think it really is something we have to work at as a community to begin to tell that story. The money is there. It's not like the money isn't there. It's there if necessary in order to enable economies. But we just haven't cracked that nut exactly on how we express that as technical people. We get all balled up in the technology and the acronyms, and then they start looking at us like, you know, we have two heads. So I think it's something we have to really, really work at. And I do know that there's a different part of ICAO that's working on telling that story more in an economic way, which is what a minister would look for, or what a government would look for, and rightly so. So you're 100% right. We have to find a better way to tell that story that hooks in the political system, but that is one that is honest about what's necessary to continue to enable an economy. And the saddest part about all of that is the developing nations are the ones that need that story most, that at the moment are the least capable of telling it. So it is really an important question, and it's an important activity. I will say the president of the council has worked pretty hard on the No Country Left Behind notion, and beginning to put some words behind that are more focused on the telling of the story. So I give him credit for that, and certainly more work needs to be done there.
Thanks, Nancy. Hajimi?
Okay, thank you, Henk. Thank you very much. A very good question. So last month, so ICAO hold IWAF, International World Aviation Forum in Abuja, Nigeria. So the topic is this, as you know, that how the economic, implementing global aviation plan will connect or develop social economic benefit to the state. So many director general and also ministers are attending the meeting. But As you know, we discussed yesterday at the closing or opening. So the next GAMP, because we know the challenges, because it's too technical matters. So it's difficult for the political high-level person to understand the content of this GAMP. So the next GAMP will have separately or in the beginning, there is an executive summary which appeal to the high-level people, and then they easily understand the benefit. But just Nancy said, the paper is paper, so we need more interactions. So there will be several opportunities. For example, PARG is still not so high-level people are not attending at this moment, but this PARG also will be a good forum to exchange best practice or business model among nations. And this information first, of course, the technical people or low-level people understand, and then they will bring back to their states and explain to their high-level people person the benefit for the states, and also for the safety and efficiency. So. And also, I believe other DGCA or other ministerial level meeting, those global plan need to be highlighted and more encouraged to appeal the economic benefit to implement. And I believe in the world there are several success models to successfully implement this module. So this best practice will appeal to other countries and other high-level people to provide a fund and resources for their states. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think also at that level, at the political level, it's the human connection that drives things. It are human beings that sit in a room and listen to stories as Nancy taught us, and get convinced. And there are ways then to do things. So also that we need to keep in mind. So I think I can allow one more question if you promise me that question is short. So, yeah, sorry. Here in the, yes, thank you.
Okay. So, Andy Shand from UK NATS. Mr. Yoshimura very clearly stated the need to cater for growth. We have increasingly capable aircraft and tools available to us to modernize airspace to make it much more efficient. However, the biggest blocker to change for many states is the public reaction to any changes to flight paths. I'd be interested in the panel's view on how we as an industry and states should address that.
The answer can be short. So who can I? Don.
Thank you for this very short question, Andy. I think that now we have access to much more data on the aircraft. We can share this with the community. I mean that aircraft make much less noise, for instance, and you can demonstrate this to the community, and you can give access to the people. So sharing data is not only between us, the aviation industry, but we should share the data to the public, and so that they can assess and see the benefit of this new technology and the impact on the environment too, in CO2 emission, but in terms of noise, because the issue that you have is a noise issue. And then with the PBN technology, you can spread the trajectory, and then you annoyed your neighbor one day, and the other day the guys that you like much.
Spread the pain solution, right?
Yes.
It's funny that you say that, because I just moved into a new house a year and a half ago or so, which is very close to a general aviation airport, which I love. I love seeing little birds fly around. And I went to the first homeowners association meeting about 2 weeks ago, and people were just complaining and moaning and carrying on about the noise. And I said, excuse me, but you moved into an airport that was already there. What in the holy world are you complaining about? It was here?
They still like you?
No, since when does that bother me? But seriously, it was really, you moved into an airport that was already there. I think your point, though, is there's a growing sensitivity to noise wherever you are. It remains to be seen whether the public is going to be willing to have a whole bucket of little UAVs flying around delivering packages. We don't know how the public's going to react to that. We don't know what the tolerance is going to be for that. We just don't know. But I think the only solution for the moment is just to share the pain, rotate and share the pain, because as much as people complain about it, they still want to fly. So at the end of the day, there has to be some compromise and continued dialogue and working with the communities, but they still want to fly. So it's just to share the pain. And the tools now that we have enable, you can even show, this is the way we're sharing the pain. What are you going to do? And leave it at that.
Good. I think it's about time to wrap this session up, so let me try that. We had some interesting questions and discussions, very good presentations. What is clear, I believe, and I hope you all agree with me, that, well, the growth in aviation is continuous. We have seen that in the presentation. There are new entrants. In fact, you can see it that our sort of traditional aviation system is in a sandwich of innovation. And we need to find ways to embrace that innovation and take it as a great opportunity at this point in time that we need in order to move the whole aviation system forward, not to accommodate more growth, but also to accommodate new entrants. And that's an opportunity that we have. And what certainly is not an option is to move on as we have done over the past decades. Extrapolation of the past is definitely not an option. We will hit ceilings, we hit walls, and that's not what we like, because that hurts. The process of transformation must take place to ensure that the aviation system is future-proof, is scalable, is sustainable, and can accommodate these new entrants and also accommodate the expected growth. And the GAMP 2019 will be, when it's agreed at the Assembly in 2019, will be the agreed transformation plan through transforming concepts such as TBO and system-wide information management. We heard about these two concepts. We need to find new ways and develop them for aviation to benefit from all the technology that's out there, all the fast-moving innovation that is out there and that's happening around us, that make the world turn around us. We need to embrace that in the aviation system and fully benefit from it. So the GAMP is not only the global plan to get to the agreement and to drive transformation, it's also the reference, the plan for regional and national transformation plans and transformation implementation plans, because at that level things need to happen. It's not at a global level, big bang and all together. It's where it is needed, where it needs to happen, and that starts at the national, at the regional level. So the GAMP in its new structure will address all these levels and will bring it down to the place where the action needs to be taken. So only then I think we can face the future and we can embrace it and we can make sure that our aviation system will not be an extrapolation of the past, but will be driven by the challenges of tomorrow. So I think with that, I hope I summarized at least the ideas that we have expressed. I also, again, would like to come back to Nancy's presentation, the human element in this. So we can have plans, we can have initiative, we can have technology, but we need to continue to draw attention to the interhuman aspects, because it are at the end of the day us humans that make it happen. So with that, I would really like to thank our panel, our presenters, Steve, Don-Jacques, Yoshimaru, and Nancy. Please give them a big round of applause. I would like to thank you for your very good questions and listening to us. And it's now time for some refreshment, for a coffee break. I would like to thank the sponsor, Arian, for providing this coffee break. And please talk about this subject during the coffee break, network, get into this human connection. We will continue this stream after the coffee break, which is in 30 minutes. So I would like to ask you to come back here at 11 stipt to continue. Thank you very much.